Dear friends, I could never have imagined giving a recorded Episcopal address. But for those of you that watched or attended in person the 2024 session of the West Ohio Annual Conference, you know that time got short and I sort of truncated the time that I had been allotted for the Episcopal address. The good news is we were having a party, and it was a wonderful party for which Cynthia and I will forever be grateful. It'll be just one more way in which we hold you in our hearts and in our memories across the unfolding years, which we hope are many. So thanks be to God for you and for the ways in which we have been able to partner together. Would you join me in a moment of prayer? Gracious and eternal God, we pray in this moment and in all of the moments of our lives that the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts, that they would indeed find acceptance in thy sight. O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Just a moment ago, I offered a word of thanks, and I want to pick up on the language of the Apostle Paul in his communication or his letter to the church at Rome, where he says in the first chapter, I thank my God through Jesus Christ for you all. I want you to know that every day for the last 12 years and into what I hope will be a long future, that has been and that will be my sentiment, that I thank my God through Jesus Christ for you all. I thank you for the ups and I thank you for the downs. I thank you for the ways in which we have partnered together in ministry and for the ways in which we did not necessarily share at every moment a single clear-eyed view of what was the next best thing to do. I thank you for the ways in which you have supported me as a person, as your bishop, supported my family, which primarily is Cynthia, but by extension, our family, our children. Thank you for being you, for being loving, for being kind, for being generous, for being future focused. Thank you for helping us to feel all of the moments of our times here that we were a part of a real church writ large. And so I end this section by saying what the Apostle Paul said, I thank my God through Jesus Christ for you all. The second thing I want to do, and there may be notes of this that you've picked up earlier across the years or even in 2024. When one comes to retirement, it is an important time for him or her to reflect on the journey of where they have been in their life's work, in their life with family, in their life in the church, in their life in the community. And I've got a lot of reflections, but I don't intend to pour them out all on you in this short video. But I do want to say that as I reflect on my time with you, but also inevitably on my time in the practice of vocational ministry, I can say that there are many, many things that I feel good about. So I look at each appointment that I've had, each assignment I've had as a bishop. I can point to specific things where we partnered. I partnered with God's people in Christ, and we got some things done in the power of the Holy Spirit to glorify God and to come alongside of our neighbors in Christian community. We have preached the gospel in places that some of us never expected to preach it. We have sent money and sent ourselves into mission in places that we never dreamed of. They were simply spots on a map, but we were responding to need and to the opportunity to serve. We have gotten a lot done, and it is not appropriate for me to list a long litany of things that I feel like I've accomplished. Anything that's been accomplished for the reign of God, the glorification of God, the proclamation of the gospel has been in partnership with the triune God and in partnership with God's people in Christ. And so again, in reflecting on all that we've been able to do, even across these last 12 years, I want to say thank you and to rejoice that so much good has been done. Now, when I reflect on my own leadership and my own discipleship, I cannot help but own that there are some things that I have not done so well. I have some regrets. None that keep me up at night tossing and turning. But in just looking back a little bit, I do have some moments of I wish I had, of woulda, coulda, shoulda. You know the drill. But most of that I attribute to myself, to quirks in my personality, bad habits that I've had across time that I did not get myself liberated enough from in order to do more for the reign of God. I can be obsessive about that. I can beat myself up about that. I can shame and guilt myself up about that. But what I have come to the mind of is I need to name it, acknowledge it, that I'm not perfect and that I've not done everything perfectly well for all of the good that I may have done. And I must do what I've said to other people across time. Trust in the grace and mercy and forgiveness of God. But here's what's even more important, that in the church, we have the privilege of living into grace, mercy, and forgiveness for one another and with one another. And so I want to say to you boldly and clearly and unambiguously, and this for all of the people that I've tried to serve across nearly 50 years of the practice of ministry. Where I have failed, I am sorry. Where you have forgiven me for my failures in the execution of my role, I am so grateful. Thank you for being a merciful people, a forgiving people, a kind people, a gracious people, and an understanding people. And what you have extended to me, if you can embody that all the time, if we can do that all of the time in the work of God through the Church of Jesus Christ, imagine the redemptive and transforming impact we can have upon individual lives and we can have upon the mission. Finally, this in reflection. I've got some gifts and I've got some skills and I've tried to use them. But most of all, what I have learned is that God's people in Christ, and in this season, that would be you have been my best teachers. You have helped me to have and to see and to claim angles of view that if left to myself, I would have never gotten to that angle of view. You have said, Greg, stand over here and look at the challenge and see if there is an opportunity. Look at it from this angle. Consider doing it in this way. And in our collaboration, we have learned together. But what I owe to you and to all of the people that I have partnered with in mission and ministry across this time, as I reflect back across these decades, is you have been my teachers. Thank you for being patient and kind and generous teachers and understanding what every teacher in a classroom knows, that every student, and I have been a student, has a different learning style. We don't all learn in the same way, and we don't all take in knowledge, information, new perspectives in exactly the same way. But if shown enough angles of view and given enough time, it is possible for the student to really thrive. And you, my friends, have helped me to thrive. Now, I want to shift from this time of gratitude and reflection on years of ministry to talking about our life in the church. And what I have on my iPad here says, observations and moving forward. May I say to you unambiguously that we as the West Ohio Conference and we as the United Methodist Church have come through a complex season. I may actually be overstating the case to even posit the notion that we are through said season. But consider across the last decades the huge cultural upheavals, especially in the last 50 years. To speak nothing of our own protracted identity crisis as a denomination, played out largely in the arena of disagreement about the church's social teaching, seen through the lens of human sexuality in particular. But truth be told, while this was the presenting issue, it was not, and it never will be, the core issue. At the core, the church is called over and over and over again, as it claims the identity that God has for us, to surrender to the sovereignty of God and the lordship of Jesus Christ in the power of the Holy Spirit. The church must always be clear about its mission, which means being crystal clear about its relationship to the world. God in Christ didn't come just to mission us, but to stir us to mission in partnership with the triune God for the sake of and the good of the world. This is an ongoing exercise in knowing and loving our neighbors and choosing to one another, each other, rather than to objectify and other our neighbors. The recent, though long delayed, General Conference took some significant steps in this direction. In one anothering, particularly as the table of inclusion grew wider and we worked through, at least legislatively, our response to being in relationship with people who are gay and lesbian, for example. The church, through the General Conference, spent time on decentering one part of the globe and therefore somewhat, even if unintentionally, subjugating other parts of the globe to itself. We are now, my friends, treading the yet to get solid ground of trying to reframe our practice of being church, particularly as United Methodists. In this yet unsettled time, let us not delude ourselves into believing that United Methodists are all on the same page about everything. The delegates at the General Conference, recently adjourned in Charlotte, North Carolina, have voted, and in their voting, in their actions, consent calendar or debated on the floor, have set a direction. And this was their responsibility. This is what they were elected to do. This is what they are called to do, given our church polity. Now, the whole church, delegates and beyond, have to walk the path of interpretation, of articulation, of explanation, and trying to help each person and every congregation, every conference, every caucus, every tribe, every theological bent to find their place to stand and to practice ministry and engage the mission of making disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. Let me say more. We have long proclaimed that we as United Methodists, and I would say our predecessor bodies before us that formed the United Methodist Church, we have long proclaimed that we are a big tent church. The challenge of making that more true than ever is really upon us. It has always been, but it is very, very true and real and sort of in our face in this season of upheaval, of chaos, and of change. Saying that we have room for a wide swath of opinions does not guarantee that we live in that way. One thing is legislation, another thing is practice. You have doctrine on the one hand, or teaching, and you have behavior on the other hand. For 50 plus years, we have navigated what some of us would define as an intolerance to inclusion for certain parts of the church. Some parts of our church family have been defined and even caricatured because they were defined by their intolerance, what they were against, for example, what they could not live with, what they could not accept. But let me assure you, dear friends, that post-disaffiliation and post the 2020 delayed General Conference, which took place in 2024, the burden of tolerance and of embodying inclusion has shifted from right to left. I believe the United Methodist Church has theological and missional space. Hear that. This is not just about a head trip. It is not just even about personal piety. That the United Methodist Church has theological and missional space for more people than not. But we will have to work hard to make that the reality and the norm of our common and shared life. When all is said and done, the proverbial big tent cannot be our driving metaphor. You can't grow a church on being a big tent. We need other images, other metaphors. It is at best, that is the big tent, a servant to another image. It is a pathway. It is a tactic to another image that must drive us and nurture us and sustain us, namely the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ our Lord. The cross of Jesus Christ must rise above all other images, must burst out of our tents and out of our bubbles. It is our surest reminder of the bigness of God. A big tent is not ever big enough on a screen or on a painting or in our minds to contain everybody. But the cross of Jesus Christ is big enough for us all. So our chief reminder of the largeness of God's heart and God's yearning for our hearts and our minds to be large must be the cross of Jesus Christ. We have room in the tent because the cross has made room for all of us. And either we find our true identity in the cross and the gospel, or we have no identity worth clinging to. The cross of Jesus Christ tells us and reminds us what was true at creation, that we are all God's beloved children. The cross reminds us that there is room for each and every one. The cross reminds us that our past does not have to determine our future alone. The cross reminds us of the possibilities, and because we know that the story didn't end at the cross, but we are living out of the reality of an empty tomb, we are reminded of endless possibilities of being and becoming the persons and the community of people that God had always hoped and yearned that we would be. So here's some work for us going forward. The church, I believe, and I speak of the United Methodist Church, and let me be more specific, the West Ohio Conference, though we're not the whole church. We must become crystal clear about who and what a disciple of Jesus Christ is, how that person walks and talks and looks and acts in the church and in the world. Our refusal to be strong and clear-throated about the nature of discipleship and what is needed, what is required, what are the hopeful possibilities of faithfully following Jesus as persons and as communities of persons, must be articulated by the church. We have shied away from saying this as much as we should. We have that material in the discipline, but we just don't visit it that much. The scriptures are very clear, but we are often too busy knick-knacking and arguing over minutia and other things. The question is, who is a disciple? What does a disciple look like? How do they speak? How do they act? How do they serve? How are they engaged in the church? But perhaps more importantly, in the world. The second work that we must do is somehow or another work at our clarity and articulation, not only of who we are and not only of the mission, but some of the tools of our being and of our missional work. I've become increasingly convinced that in our culture, particularly in the United States, but it's true elsewhere in the world, and in the church, we are not speaking the same language. We are so overrun with communication that we're getting snippets from here and snippets from there, but we are not taking the time to articulate with clarity, much less listen to others, because sometimes when others open their mouths, we assume we're in disagreement with them, but we've simply not had the time to process what they're saying, to see if there is congruence, even if they use a different vocabulary. This communications thing is overwhelming us. Statistics on worldwide texting, for example, show that the number of monthly texts sent increased more than 7,700% in the last decade. The amount of texting on a monthly basis in the Western world increased by 7,700% in the last decade. In 2014, Americans sent over 8.5 billion texts per day. The average person sends 72 messages per day. The average American is subjected to approximately 6,000 messages a day. We communicate a lot, but I'm not sure that we communicate well, nor am I sure that we are all speaking the same language. We must work at speaking well, but might it be a time for us to renew the practice of deep listening to one another well in the life of the church in order that we might model it for the world? Think what our world might be like and what our church could be like if we paused before we sent that next text or uttered that next phrase, to make sure that we were responding to what had been said, that we were doing it thoughtfully, that we were groping and searching for just the right words. We cannot settle for communicating with emojis. We will need something deeper and different in the days to come as we work at communicating more faithfully and more authentically and more effectively in the church and in the world. Thirdly, we must, and you've heard this from me before, it's been a hobby horse of mine, we must flee from what I call false dichotomies and at the same time manage complexity far better than we have. In our Wesleyan heritage, we know that we are the people who have been called to bring and hold together knowledge and vital piety, for example. The matters of the heart and the brain, for example, need not be as separated as we have made them sometimes. We are not invited to walk into a house of worship, into a community of Christians, and somehow or another leave our brains in the parking lot, put a quarter in a proverbial meter. We are the people of head and heart. We bring those together. Knowledge and vital piety must stay together. We need a gospel, and we have such a gospel, that evangelizes the individual and the culture. Changing, for example, the book of discipline and certain language in it, by the way, is not a strategy of evangelism. It's a change of words and of nomenclatures that will make us feel better for a short period of time. But until we become the people who are actually engaging other people and all of the people around us in what we imagine is our big tent, we will not make the difference that we hope to make. But here the key again is we must see ourselves as evangelizing individuals and the culture. These tasks go together. We ourselves need to be re-evangelized with the good news of the gospel all the time, lest we think we are the gospel. And the gospel we commend to the world must have not just words, but must have behaviors that are consonant with it. The Church of Jesus Christ must decide anew that we are in the business of bringing people together, that we are under a gospel of peace, that the peace of the cross has freed us from enmity and strife with one another and against one another. We must hold together this world with our embodiment and our intention to be peacemakers in it. Now, I said something earlier about complexity as I was also speaking about dealing with these false dichotomies. Let me say something under the aegis of the gospel of peace. We have all been thinking since October 7th, even though we've thought it before, how heinous, how criminal, how mean-spirited, how inhumane the attacks of October 7th, 2023 were of Hamas against Israel. And as we have watched the unfolding of what has happened there in Gaza, we have seen inhumanity and inhumanity after inhumanity and cruel act coming from multiple directions. It is possible for us not only to be a voice, but to weigh in to these matters of peace and justice and to speak the kind of truth that condemns hatred and condemns heinous criminal acts, whether or not they are committed by Hamas or Israel, or you go to any other place in the world. We must hold that kind of complexity together, find our role in it, and find the ways in which we are proclaiming a gospel of peace in this world, in the arenas of public policy and everywhere else. I came across a quote during these days of war there, and that's not the only place where the world is on fire with war. The Reverend Dr. Howard Thurman said, listen to this, during times of war, hatred becomes quite respectable, even though it has to masquerade often under the guise of patriotism. May I say to you that any people, any tribe, any nation can fall prey to this, that in times of war, when we believe wrong has been done to us, we can say we are being patriotic, but what we're really doing is embodying with acts of violence the hatred that is burning within us. We must clear our throats and make our voices known in this fractured world. Bishop William McAlilly of the Tennessee Western Kentucky Annual Conference said something on a call we were on probably almost a year ago. I'm confident when he said it that he was praying. I had my head bowed, but when he said that phrase, my head jerked up. And I memorized it then, but I read it to you now so that I won't miss anything. I do not know if it's original to him or if he was quoting someone else. But listen to what he said. Our world is too dangerous for anything but truth, and our world is too fragile for anything but love. Will we be a church that speaks truth and truth to power, and at the same time does not separate it from our obligation, our duty, and our high privilege to embody love? Listen to this one from Bonhoeffer. Those of you that have ever received an email from me have seen it at the bottom of my signature there as a quote. I keep saying I'm going to change it. I need to freshen it up, but it keeps speaking to me over and over again. Bonhoeffer said, Christianity stands or falls with its revolutionary protest against violence, arbitrariness, and pride of power, and with its plea for the weak. Christians are doing too little to make these points clear, rather than too much. Christendom adjusts itself far too easily to the worship of power. Christians should give more offense, shock the world far more than they are doing now. Christians should take a stronger stand in favor of the weak rather than considering first the possible right of the strong. End of quote. Which really says what I want to say in the fourth instance, what we must pay attention to as we are remissioned and re-evangelized to become a gospel people. Will we, as United Methodists, cast our lot with the most vulnerable in our communities and in this world? Or will we merely have mission projects that seek to serve our vulnerable neighbors? Will we see our lot with their lot? Will we see their boats rising is not an offense to our boats which have already risen in so many cases? Will we be a church that follows Jesus to the pain, to the hurts, to the vulnerabilities, to the brokenness of our world? I believe Bonhoeffer was right, particularly for the church in the Western world. We have over-identified with power and with success. We've made that our model for being the church. Perhaps the future of the United Methodist Church, but dare I say the West Ohio Conference, will be found when we find our lot cast with the most vulnerable and the needy around us, not as an occasional summer or holiday mission project, but as a way of being in the world. Dear friends, as always, I'm humbled and grateful that you would take any number of minutes to listen to anything that I have to say. And none of us knows exactly what the future holds for us, but we do know who holds the future. And so my encouragement and my hope for all of us is that we will move forward with assertiveness and boldness, not born of our own hubris, but of confidence in the cross and in the gospel of Jesus Christ. And let the final outcomes be in the hands, in the heart of God, because they already are. Charles Albert Tindley, in one of his great hymns, a chorus of which says, we'll understand it better by and by. He says, we are often tossed and driven on the restless sea of time. Somber skies and howling tempests oft succeed a bright sunshine. But in that land of perfect day, when the mists have rolled away, we will understand it better by and by. Thanks be to God for this time and for you and the work that we are called to do together. Amen.